So let's pick up from our conversation, Mozart. So I had said that we were looking at people like Mozart, James Clerk Maxwell, and a lot of these people. You talked about Bach and his kids. What did you say about them? That they were pretty good in music.
Yeah, so Bach, is one of the music genius who left a legacy of music, incredible. He had 20 kids, more or less.
Wow.
I should check how many exactly, but he had around 20 kids, and a lot of them were legitimate composers and had did their lives in music. And so my point was mostly to talk about how we're so distracted in our era with social media, with screens, with entertainment, and back then there was just nothing else to do than learn.
Yes.
And his father, so Bach was the father of all these kids, and that's what he did for a living. He composed a full cantata every week for church. And he played instruments, and he taught his kids to play instruments, and that's what they did when they were bored. They did music, and they became great composers. And the same thing with Mozart, who by 7, was toured his region with playing, and who started composing just that early, and wrote some of his masterpieces at I think his first opera he was 12 years old. And this is unimaginable for our days, but that's just what they were soaked in.
Correct. So and what I was going to follow up with that though, that point is very good. It helps me because I study math history and science history, and maybe I need to be careful not to be too hard on myself and others. But what I followed up with is, I think it's interesting. Maybe we need to set our expectations clearly. We're not calling everybody to be like Mozart or Bach tomorrow or next year, but what we are saying, whatever you do have and whatever you've been called to, do it well. And I think that's what we're calling people to do. And so I know I have people like George Washington Carver, Leonard Euler, and in our school we talk about all different people and their backgrounds. And I think what's interesting is a lot of these people will tell you whatever you're doing, do it well. So let's take an 8th grader, for example. They do Algebra 1 in 8th grade typically. In our school, we actually train them earlier on from K4. We're really hitting arithmetic hard so that kids in 6th or 7th grade can actually be thinking about algebra. But the thing is, if I dedicate myself and apply myself, I probably can do much better than what is happening right now. And if somebody's applying themselves and they're still not doing well, maybe we should check their techniques. Wouldn't you say? If somebody's saying, well, I'm practicing every week, but I'm still bad. Well, maybe we need to check how you're practicing. Have you noticed that in music?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The mindless practice. You become perfect at what you're practicing, but if you're practicing wrong, you become perfect at doing mistakes. So we often tell students, don't practice your mistakes. Fix the mistakes, and then
Okay.
So obviously the way you practice, and so that's the main thing. My husband, who's a piano professor, also says like most of teaching music is teaching how to practice.
Wow.
Because most of the music they're doing is in the practice room.
Yes.
And so you can fill them with information, but if they go and they practice it in ways that that doesn't bear fruit, then it's useless. It's
useless. And I think, and I mentioned the book Peak, which I recommend to parents to consider because he does talk about that deliberate practice and how to practice. And so I just imagine if our math students and science and music people and French are practicing and learning how to, do things better in their practice, I think we can get kids going far. Now, one thing I thought we could talk about too is summer for a second. The summer break is, again, I haven't studied the United States history to see why we get 3 months back-to-back off, but many countries don't do that. I mean, you mentioned Canada takes 2 months. England, I think, takes 10 weeks off out of the whole year. But what I realized, I'll talk about math, and then maybe if you don't mind just sharing about music and what your expectation might be for someone who sings or is learning French. But I feel like with math, when we take 3 months off, we gain ground through the year. When we take 3 months more off, it's almost like we're moving backward. So then my plea to parents and to students is to consider, imagine how far you can go if you never take all 3 months off and dedicate about 30 minutes or 45 minutes a day. Just imagine how far you can get. And then if you recognize that, then the question is, well, why not? Why not try? And so please, maybe consider that. I have worksheets, I have things you can do, or maybe even reading math history, and that could count too. Anything to just grow. What would you say for music and language?
Absolutely. I mean, there's something about summer where the rhythm is different, the routine is different, our mind is in a different place, and so there's works that you can do, and you can incorporate and integrate the information in a different way than during the year. And I observe this teaching my students during the year, and those who take summer lessons, like it's just like it opens up a whole world that during the year when there's so much going on, it's their brain space is limited. And so and also my kids started piano a couple of years ago, and they don't have lessons during the summer, but we have them review their piece, and we have them like explore on the piano for fun. And the work that happens in their mind by reviewing their pieces, playing around with their pieces, playing around with notes, that's bigger than anything they do during the whole year, because that's really when they make it their own. That's when also they develop a passion for it, because they play with it instead of being told what to do. And so there's maybe a different kind of work, but than during the year, but that it's crucial to have kids play with. I use the word playing because that's how we learn the best. But to kind of have a different approach and dig deeper in the material.
Okay. Well, you've just inspired me to think a different way of how I should tell them to do math in the summer, and I'm going to try that, especially next summer, even though there's still about 5 weeks of this summer. What I'm going to try doing is let's try learning math with a more relaxed approach, but still learn. Let's still gain ground. If the kids don't want to see the same textbooks during the school year, maybe I'll just teach them the history of functions or whatever, and then just show a little bit of applications. But as long as they're keeping the knowledge in use, I think, or using the knowledge, I think it's going to help them in the fall. So thank you for saying that. But those are my initial questions. I don't know if you have any final thoughts before we wrap up this.
It reminds me of a conversation I had with your wife about doing math at the dinner table.
Yes.
And this is really the place where you end up incorporating. When they've learned stuff during the day, and then you play with it during dinner. And my son is at a point where he asks us for math equations.
Wow.
When he's bored in the car for a long car ride, or at dinner when he doesn't really want to eat his dinner and he's distracted. And so those kind of
Well, that's amazing. No, thank you. So I will let you move on to what you have to do, but I'm hoping that we'll keep some of these conversations coming throughout the year. So thank you.
Thank you.